Hello, hello, you guys. Welcome back to the podcast and welcome, Kara Perez. I'm so excited to have you on today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm stoked. For those that don't know you yet, could you give us a little introduction on you, what you do, all of that good stuff?
Yes, the TLDR on me is I'm a financial educator and author of the book Money for Change: How to Reduce Waste, Build Wealth, and Create a Better Future for All. And I am a money nerd who is also a sustainability geek, is how I like to describe myself. So I talk about things like saving and investing and budgeting, but also aligning all of those things with your values. So putting your money where your heart is, essentially. And I have paid off a whole bunch of student loan debt. I bought a house by myself. I'm very into, especially women, but like women, people of color, non-binary folks, building out financial stability for themselves so that we can go out and like raise hell in the world.
Oh, I'm so excited to chat because that's my favorite thing in the world. And I think the timing like couldn't be better because I know I myself, as well as like so many friends that are in the entrepreneur world, are feeling really weird about like current state of affairs, especially here in
Mm.
America, and like feeling super odd about trying to earn money in this political, cultural, economic climate. And we truly can do so much more good in the world when we're doing well financially. So I'm super excited to dive into everything with you. Did one or the other come first? Like chicken or the egg? Like, were you into sustainability first, money first? Did they kind of come at the next, like, same time? Like, how'd you kind of get into all of this stuff?
Okay, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the rainforest. Like, I don't know if any other 90s kids, I'm 36, I'm a solid millennial. I just remember being in elementary school and learning about the Amazon getting deforested and being like, oh my God, this is the crisis of our generation. And I got
So real.
really, really into it. Um, and so I would say just kind of a general interest in nature. And I wouldn't have called it sustainability when I was, in third grade, but I would say that came first. And then I grew up very low income in a single parent household, and I have two siblings. So I was also always very aware of money, but not in a financially literate kind of way, just in a like, oh, mom said to put that back. Mom said we're not going on vacation this year. Like a lack of money was what I was
Mm-hmm.
kind of grew up with. And then when I graduated college in 2011, I had $25,302 in student loans, which is not a huge amount of money, but, and this is something I talk about a lot on my platforms because I think it's so necessary to normalize this. I was low income for the entirety of my 20s, like straight up until 30 was the first year that I earned $50,000. So when you are very low income, I was making like $15,000 a year, $16,000 a year working in food service, having 25,000 plus in debt, it may as well have been $1 million, like because it was so inconceivable to me that I would ever be able to pay that off. So I would say the sustainability technically came first, but money came in like like a wrecking ball, to quote
Mm-hmm.
Miley, in my early 20s and was like, girl, you need to figure this out because not being financially literate, not literally not having any money is ruining your life.
No, it truly bleeds into everything. And I don't know a single person that can like operate well when they like don't know how rent is going to get paid the next month. Like that's just not
Yeah.
sustainable for anyone. So you're saying your 20s is like really when it hits, which is yeah, I'm like tails all the time with student loans, especially. Like it's so crazy when we think about, which like discussion for another day, but like so crazy to think about the fact that we like start out our adult lives like hundreds of K in debt sometimes. Like
Hmm.
so wild to start adult life like that. Where where did you start when you were like, okay, so can't live like this. Like I need to start chipping away at this or I need to make some changes. Where were you at in life when that kind of hit and what were your first steps?
Yeah. So I was 25, classic quarter life crisis. I was living in Austin, Texas at the time with three roommates who were and still are very good friends of mine. But it was very interesting to be in that house with them because they all came from much more financially stable and flat out wealthy families. So, like, none of them had student loans, none of them had
Mm,
any kind of debt. Two of them were receiving financial support from parents. And so they were just able to do a lot of things I wasn't able to do. And I could clearly see the divide,
mhm,
right? Like, and so it hit me at 25, like, girl, no one is going to save you. Like your mom doesn't know anything about this. You don't talk to your dad. Like you have to figure this out. And so just as like a classic millennial, I turned to Google and I literally Googled how to pay off student loans faster because at the time, I wasn't thinking about like financial freedom. I wasn't thinking about how do I build wealth or how do I become financially literate or financially fluent. I literally was just like, my student loans are ruining my life. I cry about my student loan debt. Like, this is the problem. If I can just get rid of my debt, everything will be better. That's the
Mm.
beginning and the end of what I was thinking about money at the time. And I share that not to judge my past self, but just to say to anyone listening that you might have something like that that feels kind of all consuming, like you hate your job or you have student loan debt or credit card debt. And it's okay to lock in on that one thing, which is what I did. And I just devoted myself to paying off my debt. So I was working seasonally as a lacrosse coach. I played lacrosse in college. So when I decided to get serious, it was like December 28th, 2014. And then January through May, I worked as a part time lacrosse coach and a part time caterer. And that was it. That was like all of my money, all of my income. So I was making anywhere between like 500 and like $1,200 a month. It was very low income, but I identified what my problem was, student loan debt. And then I identified my biggest asset, which at the time was time. I was like, I'm hella underemployed. Like, the easiest thing that I can think of is to just fill this time with things that will pay me. So I spent a bunch of that spring of 2015 looking for jobs that would pay me, but not full time jobs, just anything that paid. So I ended up
Real.
collecting all of these part-time jobs. I worked as a receptionist at a gym from 5:15 a.m. until 10:15 a.m. I found a part-time fundraiser job for a local nonprofit, which I would go to after the gym and hang out there from like 11:30 until 3:30. And then I would go home and I would do some freelance writing or some freelance social media, or I would go coach in the afternoon, and then on in the evenings and on the weekends I would cater. And so my day just got broken up into all these different jobs that I had, and slowly my income started to rise. Like again, not glamorously, but I went from making $16,000 a year to making like $26,000 a year and like $30,000 a year. And I was living hyper frugally, like not spending money on anything. Very extreme. And all of that extra money I made, I just pushed towards my student loans. So 10 months from, I paid off all of my debt in 10 months. And it
Oh
felt
my
like I
God.
had run a marathon or climbed Everest. I was like, I'm the strongest person in the world. There's nothing I
Nope.
can't do.
Yeah, as you should. You should feel that way. That's very quick.
It was straight hustle. And I mean, when I say my life revolved around debt payoff, there's no word of a lie there. I mean, I had just started dating my still partner, and I was like, we're not going out on dates. Like, I'm not buying new clothes. I'm not going out to drink. I literally sewed up a pair of Forever 21 $2 leggings. Like it would have been $2 to go get new ones. And I said, no, I'm not spending the $2. I was hyper, extremely like unhealthy frugal. And
Mm,
so it meant that I could make like an extra $100 payment the first week of the month, an extra $50 payment the second week of the month, an extra $300. And since I had so many jobs, even though they weren't paying me a lot, I always had a paycheck coming in, and just like
mm.
whatever wasn't going to the bare minimum bills went to debt.
Oh my gosh. So I want to touch on what you said of like it one, so inspiring. That takes so much hustle and like so much grit. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate that like especially in the beginning of like whether yeah, it's like you trying to chomp away at debt or like the beginning of your business, there is like a level of hustle that is crazy to look back on and it does eventually kind of hit a point of unhealthy or at least like unsustainable where you're like, oh, like I can't do this forever. So when did that like line come for you where you were like, oh, actually like this probably isn't something I can continue or like where did you kind of start pivoting from that level of like I've got to do earn this much money, I've got to work this much to pay off this debt to like okay, like we might actually need to change lifestyle and work habits a little.
Yeah, probably way later than I should have
Mm.
because
Real.
the situation I found myself in is after I paid off my debt, I was just at zero. I didn't
Mhm.
have all of a sudden $100,000 to my name. I just didn't have debt. So I kept working all those different jobs and living really frugally for like 2 more years because I wanted to start. At that point, I had been reading about personal finance, like blogs and social media and books, and I knew what investing was. When I was 23, I did not even know what the stock market was. I could not have explained it to you. But by the time I'm 26, 27, I'm like, I know what this is. And I know I need to start saving and investing in order to make sure I can retire one day, in order to make
Mhm.
sure that I have a house one day. And so I kept living that way. And then just instead of putting my money towards debt, I started saving it and investing it. But I also started my business. And I started my business originally as an event business, like pop up
Mm.
events talking about money because I love talking about money and I love people. I'm an extrovert. And I was like, okay, let's like see if places in Austin will give me space for free so that I can host a workshop on paying off debt because like I just paid off all my debt and I love talking about
Mhm.
this. Again, like that's all. I wasn't like, let me build an empire. I was just sort of like, I am obsessed with this and I've come through the fire. I want other people to know about this. Um, so I kept the hustle for I think too long. But honestly, now that I'm 10, 11 years out from that phase, I can look back and I can say, girl, did it have to be that way? Like I can question it and I can kind of pull at it.
Mhm.
But I also think it gave me such a strong, like true north. I was so
Mm.
hyper clear on what my goals were at that time. And again, they were just sort of like one foot in front of the other, like pay off the debt, start talking to people about how you paid off debt, start saving money.
Mhm.
It was so one step, two step, three step that I'm actually quite grateful for that. I
Mhm.
think sometimes you hear from a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of self doubt, there's a lot of imposter syndrome. I have never had that.
Obsessed.
Like, not to just like do my own horn, but because I think I took it so one step at a time and I was so deep in it, I didn't it's like I didn't have the time or the capacity to compare myself to other people because I was
Mm.
so caught up in my own experience and so focused on just getting that first 100 saved, getting that first 500 saved, telling somebody else about an HYSA. Like I didn't even think, are people judging me? Do people even think I'm
Yeah.
good? I was like,
You're
no,
like,
no, I'm
I don't
doing
have the
things.
time for that. I'm
Like,
literally too busy.
yeah. So again, like I don't want people to hear this and think, okay, so this girl is saying the only way to be successful is to like work 5 low-paying part-time jobs and grind yourself down. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I wish it had been different for my past self. I have a lot of compassion for her, but I also think it was so cool and like it got me what I wanted. So I'm thankful for that. I wish it could have been
Mhm.
easier, but I am thankful for how it ended up.
So, in hindsight, and I totally resonate with that, beginning of my career, just hustled so hard. I remember I had a June once where I shot 10 weddings and like
Mm,
three of them were out of state. So I was shooting like triple header weekends with them being out of state. Like, and I look back on it and I'm like, that was crazy.
yeah.
But I'm grateful for her. She learned a lot of lessons. But with the hindsight that you have now that you are so far past that and you get to look back with, hindsight is 2020, how could you have done it easier? Like, what do you recommend to people when you're not recommending working five
Mm.
underpaying jobs? Like, where do people start?
I think I would have been better served if instead of filling my time with just anything that paid, I had been more strategic about trying to find higher paying part-time jobs, or
Mm.
one full-time job. I mean, I did send out many applications to full-time jobs and I just never got hired. So I want to make it clear that I like that did occur to me. Every time I tell this story, people are like, why didn't you just get a regular job? And I'm like, because no one would hire me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think being more strategic about where the money comes from and leaning into skills you already have. I was, like I said, just doing anything that paid. So I kept telling people, like, yeah, I can do that. And then being like, I don't know how to do that. And so I had to spend a lot of time learning stuff. And I think that detracted from my mental health as well as like if I had just leaned into skill sets I already had, I wouldn't have had such a learning curve on so many of these things. So build from
Mm.
where you are and build from what you already know.
No, that's such an amazing piece of advice because I think, yeah, a lot of times we like look at income opportunities and we're like, I can learn that. I can learn that. And like,
I can
to
do
be,
that, sure.
you can sometimes. Like, let's be clear,
Mhm.
sometimes you can for sure. But it is always interesting when you like there's going to be things that you think you can pick up quickly and you can't. Like I just launched a new business. It's like so tangential to what I already do. It's a lesbian collective. We like throw lesbian get-togethers and parties and stuff like that.
Love.
And yeah, we love. And I'm super crafty. My mom was an art teacher. So in my head I can do all crafts. Like truly I'm like no, I got that. Like it is like this weird ego thing that I'm convinced I can do it any craft. I can't.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll start screen printing merch. Like that's, a hobby I've been dying to learn. Like, let me learn how to do it. And like my mom even was like, just, it's like weirdly hard to screen print. And I was so like, no, like I can do it. Like same mentality of like, no, I can learn. It'll be so fine. Nope. It has been the hardest thing I've ever undertaken. Like
Mm.
it is something that like, yeah, if I want to sell them, I can't right now. I'm so bad at it. And like, thankfully that's not how I'm paying my rent. I don't even know how I would be surviving if it was, but it's like sometimes you can't learn a skill fast. And that's okay too, to like recognize that and be like, okay, what are the skills that I do have and I can focus on to, expand on rather than just pulling something out of your ass. Cause I'm like, God knows I've been there where I'm like, no, I could do that for sure. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely.
100%.
What was I want to know more about like I know you said you started hosting events to like talk about money and just like talk about your experience. When did you realize I think that's like such a good example of like something you just love naturally and are good at and passionate about and like then it turned into something that you could monetize and earn money off of. What was that process kind of like? Like going from let me just talk about this because I'm obsessed with it to like, oh no, I can actually like run a business based on that. How did you like realize that? What did that journey look like?
Oh my gosh. I realized it could be a business because people would not stop asking me to help them with their personal finances. I was
Mm.
hosting these events and some of them were free and some of them I would charge like 15 bucks for. And so initially I thought, oh, this will be like a create and cultivate. That was my original goal. Like I will do these pop-up events around the country. They'll be beautiful, they'll be women focused. Eventually I'll get to the point where I can charge like $100 a ticket, but I'll start small, I'll grow the audience. And that's what I really wanted to do. And then I would go to these events and after we would do the panel or after I would do the like one-on-one Q&A with somebody, people would be like, "Hey, do you do coaching?" That was the word that kept coming up. "Do you do coaching? Do you do coaching? Can I work with you, Kara?" And I for the
Mm.
first 6 months I was like, "No." Like, "No, absolutely not." And then I realized like, "Girl, you're still catering. You're 27 years old. You're still catering to pay your bills. You're super passionate about money. Like this flame is only burning brighter year after year after year. And this is what people want. So, like, why not just give people what they want? You can tell people they're spending too
Mhm.
much on Amazon. You're qualified to do that. I'm not qualified, and I don't still to this day. Like, I don't invest on people's behalfs. I don't tell people what to invest in. You have to be licensed for that. But I can review your budget and I can review your debt payoff plan. So I started doing that. And I don't know if this is true everywhere else. And like maybe you can chime in on what it's like in Chicago. But at the time in Austin, Austin's a very event heavy city, right? There's South by
Mhm.
Southwest, there's ACL, there's all of this stuff. So hosting the events was actually pretty easy to like to get space. And then when I was there, people wouldn't, it was not a business card city, it was a what's your Instagram city.
Mm,
So
mhm.
then I was like, I need to get on Instagram. Like, because before that, I did not have personal social media. And
Mhm.
then once I was on Instagram and I realized you could do like sponsored posts, you could do all of this stuff, I was like, okay, this could be a whole ecosystem. So things kind of, I would say, like fell into, again, kind of one step at a time. People wanted me to
Mhm.
coach them. I said yes. People wanted my Instagram. I made an Instagram. Brands wanted to be marketed on my Instagram. I selected the ones that aligned with the value. So, like, as things have come up, I have assessed the opportunity and said, is this something I can do? If yes, how do I want to do it? If no, is there someone else that I can point these people to? And can I like build my network that way? And that's we've just been rocking and rolling. And now, so it's 2025. I started my business in January 2017 officially. That's when I got the LLC. So that's
Oh
when
my gosh.
so we've been at it for a while.
Hmm. I love that. No, and I think too, like, it's again, that's such a testament to like staying in your lane of genius. And like, you don't have to be advising people on the stock market or investing in order to be good at your job. Like, you can make your job the things that you are good at and leave it there. What advice do you have for people that are, let's say, in debt, or like, well, let's phrase it as two different questions. Like, one, what do you say for people that are in debt and are wanting to start chipping away at that and start handling that better while also not completely sacrificing their life, and vice versa? Like, maybe they're not in debt, but they're like, I need to start having money that I can invest with, or, live a better life with, or what have you. Like, what is your advice on where to start with those things?
And this is why now I try and focus on sustainability because the exercise I encourage people to do is sit down, go over the last month or couple months of spending, and highlight the things that you don't even remember buying or that you don't care about or that you don't even use. Because it will shock you. The average American spends a ton of money on little things that they don't use or on a lot of like garbage because so much of what we make now is poor quality.
Mm,
It's designed to break so that we buy it again. So I encourage you to sit down and go over that. And when I did this, the very first time I did this was when I had my quarter life crisis. And I sat down and I was like, oh my God, for someone who's making 16K a year, I am spending a lot of money on $2 Tuesdays, which was this bar. I
real.
was like a little embarrassed, but there was a bar in Austin called Shangri-La, and they would do $2 Tuesdays. You could get any well drink in a mixer for $2. And that's an amazing deal. So you could go out and get hammered for $10. And remember, I was like 23, 24, 25. I don't drink like that anymore. But, for someone who is making 16K, why am I spending $10, $15 a week at Shangri-La? So relative to my income, that was a lot of money.
Hmm.
And so you may have a shocking realization like that. You may just be like, oh, I tend to overspend on, Amazon or Target or something. But identifying that because it's not values based. It's not like bringing you joy, right? These are the things that you like don't remember,
Mm,
you don't care about, you're not using. So it's not like your favorite most amazing memory of the last month. It's like the bullshit. Cut that out. I like to do monthly challenges, like 1 month of no eating out, 1 month of no
mm,
Target, 1 month of no going to the movies. It's not saying you can never go to the movies ever again. It's saying, I'm not going to the movies in March. In April, I'll go to the movies. I'm not
mm,
going to eat out in April. And then in May, I'll eat out. And I think that's a really good way to test for you as an individual. What is something that's easy for you to give up? And what is something that's hard for you to give up? So, like if you're a foodie, saying, I'm never going to go out to eat ever again, not realistic. You're going to break that so fast. But if you're like, oh, I did this exercise Kara was talking about, and I bought like four things off of Instagram ads
mm.
that I don't really like or use. So, like, I know I'm going to put a time limit on my Instagram app so that I spend less time and therefore less money on Instagram. And that's an easier shift to make.
Mm. How do you walk the line of being really mindful of your money without towing into scarcity? Because I know that's something that like always really freaks me out. Like, I went off budgeting for like a lot of years because I did take it too far and I got really scarcity with it. And I was like, I literally need to like course correct and like let myself occasionally spend money, until I inevitably overcorrected with that as well and then had to go back to budgeting. But how do you avoid scarcity coming up when you want to get more intentional though and mindful of your money?
I love budgeting. I just want to say that at the top, but the budget that I practice is called a values based budget. So in my budget, I literally have a line called friends. So I will
Mm,
spend money on friends, or I'm in a new state. I moved to Massachusetts in 2024. And so what I'm using that budget item for right now is like meeting people,
mm,
like going to events where you may have to pay to get in, or like, oh, you have to pay for a drink or something. And that's fine. So like I'm spending the money at a restaurant maybe, but the value is meeting people and making
mhm,
friends. And so if you can get really clear on what your personal values are, Again, think about the things you've done in the last couple of months that made you really happy. And it might be
Mhm.
something like, oh, I went out to eat with my bestie and my sister. And, we were at the restaurant for like 3 hours. We had such a good time. So the value there is not actually the food that you ate at that restaurant, it's spending time with two people that you really love. So
Mhm.
then, if you need to make changes to your budget, the question now is how can I meet that value and spend less money? So if
Mhm.
you build a values based budget, you really eliminate a lot of scarcity because you're building in all the things that light you up and bring you joy. You're just doing it in a way that makes sense for your level of income.
Mm. I love that. I think that's like so important because I hate cooking. I eat out so much. It's just, I've tried so hard to love it. I don't. And so that's always where my brain first goes when I'm like, I need to start budgeting. I'm like, I need to eat out less. I need to stop ordering DoorDash. And then I'm like, no, but like I don't spend a lot of money on alcohol. Like I don't drink. Like that's not
Mm-hmm.
important to me. And so it's so much easier to be like, okay, like that money can go to something I actually brings me joy and like betters my life. As silly as that sounds, I'm like DoorDash does better my life. Um, so I think it's so important to like check in with your values. Do you have like specific questions you prompt people to ask themselves, or do you prompt them to like more go through, like you said, like credit card statements? Like what's kind of the process of identifying those values?
Yeah, I don't really have specific prompts. I more so encourage people to look at where the dollars end up. So
Mm.
use a budgeting app, go through the credit card statements, like you said, so that you can see that. But I do encourage people to just make out a list of like their hobbies or kind of piggybacking off of what you're seeing on your spending, highlighting the things that you're like, oh, that was a fuck yeah. And highlighting the things that you're like, that was a
Mm.
question mark. Like maybe I'd do it again, but maybe I wouldn't. And then highlight the things that embarrass you. Is like, I use embarrass intentionally. I know it's like a very judgment heavy word. It could be embarrassed in the sense of like, I feel bad because I bought this. Like, this is a source of shame for me. Or it can be like, I don't even remember that. Or it can be like, I bought that when I was drunk, like, and so there's maybe some other things that you might want to kind of work through there. But I feel like embarrassment tells you a lot about yourself. Like, why do I feel embarrassed about this? Try to answer that
Mm.
question without judgment. Try to answer that
Mhm.
question in a very like nice, friendly to yourself way. I always say to people, hating yourself to change is not a way to create sustainable change. But it can be, if we have a negative feeling, that negative feeling can be very informative. And it can
Mhm.
tell us, like, oh, I felt embarrassed because of why. So now, how do we remove why? Right? Like, how do I do less of why?
Mhm.
Um, and now I can't remember what you originally asked. So I'm going to
No,
stop.
no, I think that's great. Like, no, I asked like, yeah, how to start the process of what your values are. And I love the note of like meeting it without judgment. I always like, I'm talking about on the podcast, like everything is information that you can just like be really curious about. Like, we don't have
Mhm.
to assign value to it of like good, bad. Like, it doesn't need to be like that. It's just information that we can make decisions based off. So I love the idea, yeah, of like looking at the transactions and being like, how does my body respond to this? Like,
Yeah.
how does that feel to me that I spent that money or that much in this place? Like, that's such a great place to start with identifying what you want to like put money behind.
And I want to just say really quickly, I know that's a hard exercise. I'm kind of like glossing over it here on the podcast now. It can be a very emotionally complex exercise for a lot of people. And I acknowledge that. And I have gone through that myself. And I probably will go through that again. Like inevitably, my budget will change. All budgets change. But I really, really, really just want to let people know that just because something, like you said, just all information. How did you phrase it? Everything is information.
Yeah, everything is information to just like stay curious about. Yeah.
Stay curious. That's really like just stay curious and understand that you can move at your own pace. I'm not going to like pop up in the shower one day and be like, why haven't you built a budget? Like you
No,
can move at your own pace. If you just spend 1 month just like identifying things and then you don't actually create a budget until 3 months later, that's totally fine.
no, exactly. Oh my gosh, I love that because I'm always telling my coaching clients too. I'm like, I'm not your parent nor your like boss. Like you
Yeah.
can do this at whatever pace you want. You could never do it. Like that's actually none of my business. Like you get to take it at whatever pace works for you. I love that. As we like kind of wrap up, do you have any final words of advice or like a little tangent or a little like piece of money wisdom that's really stuck out to you that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I always tell people like let the robots do the work. If you're not like
Mm.
I love being in my spreadsheets and I love talking about money even all these years later. It really lights me up inside. And you may be listening to this and being like that girl is so weird. Like, even my partner, we've been together 11 years. He hates budgeting. He hates it. Every time we sit down to do our money date as a couple, he's like this is feels like punishment. Hey,
You're like, this is my Disneyland, actually.
like, I can't believe I'm having to do this. So let the robots do the work. Like automate your savings, automate your investing. If there is, a workplace plan that you're eligible to take part of, like let them take the money directly out of your paycheck. Let the robots do the work and think about it as little as possible. Stay aware. We want to be financially aware of our lives and our spending, but I am absolutely not the girl to tell you, like, if you don't get eyeball deep in your spreadsheets every day, you're not good with money. That is not a
Mm.
lie. It's 2025. Technology is here, baby. Use it.
No, I love that. I'm like, I love a robot working for me personally. I'm like, that is I was meant to be born in this generation with a computer at my fingertips. Like that was meant for me. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Kara, for coming on and spreading such amazing, like little nuggets of wisdom, sharing your experience. Obviously, we'll link everything in the show notes for everyone to find you online, but can you tell us what your handles are, where they can connect with you?
Yes, I'm on TikTok and Instagram at We Bravely Go. It's a little weird. We Bravely
No, no.
Go. And then bravelygo.co is my website. Lots of free articles, and I'm on YouTube. And you can get my book anywhere, all the major places, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, and that is called Money for Change.
I'm obsessed. I can't wait to see all of it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Yeah, and thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.